Welcome to episode 1 of the Explorer podcast. I'm Emma, and I'm the author of mexplorer.com. I've been writing my real, true, authentic travel experiences online for about 2 years now, and I'm excited to have you join me here in a new format. I have actually recently been spending a lot of time in the car as part of my 9-to-5 job that I do have. And I realized that I spend a lot of time wishing I could listen to travel reviews as a podcast. So I thought I might as well take a crack at it. So in complement to my recent blog post, I wanted to share this video review of my recent experience on Princess Cruise Line's Best of the Bay of Naples, Pompeii, Sorrento, and Capri shore excursion. I went on this shore excursion in May of 2025 during my week-long Mediterranean cruise aboard the Sun Princess. This tour is really like the premier tour for the Port of Naples. This was also my first time ever in Italy, and so my goal was to see everything. And when you go to Naples, there are a few options. You can go to Pompeii, you can go to Capri, you can do the Amalfi Coast thing. And because I'm not sure when I'll be back in the Naples area, I said I want to do all of it. And so I convinced my mom to sign up for this tour. It is the most expensive tour on the roster in the Port of Naples offered by Princess Cruise Line itself. It'll set you back around $375 per person. It is a 10-hour experience that includes a local guide, the motor coach transportation between the port, Pompeii, and Sorrento, ferry service from Sorrento to Capri, and then another hydrofoil experience from Capri back to the Port of Naples to end the excursion. I had a blast on this tour. It was a very, very, very long day. Our experience began bright and early at the Princess Live Lounge at 8 a.m. We brought our own bottles of water and like a little morning snack. And if you do this tour, I do recommend having like a little snack on hand because it's a 10-hour tour and you never know when a little hunger might strike. And obviously water. It was hot when we went the first week of May. I cannot imagine how hot specifically Pompeii would get in the dead of summer. Our tour group was a pretty large size. I think we were in a bus with around 60 people with one tour guide for that whole group. We all headed out to a motor coach and kind of kicked off the day by driving to Pompeii. Pompeii is not a far drive from the Port of Naples. It's, I'd say, 20-25 minutes. Pompeii is where we kind of hit our first snag of the day. It just so happened that we went the weekend of May Day, which in Italy means that all of the historical sites become free for Italian residents. I believe it might just be that Sunday that we were visiting. But because of this, the lines to get into Pompeii were astronomically long. And it was only 70 degrees outside, but there was no shade whatsoever, and it was hot. And there was a bit of a miscommunication, I feel, between the tour operator and Princess, where Princess hadn't actually purchased our tickets for entry into Pompeii. So we ended up spending around 45 minutes standing outside in the beating hot sun, waiting to get entrance into Pompeii, which was a bit of a bummer. And so our time in Pompeii was cut short. The time we did have in Pompeii, however, was amazing. I went into Pompeii without many expectations. I figured, it is a thing to see. I might as well go see it. And my family had raved about it in their previous trips to the Naples area. And so, I went in kind of thinking that was going to be the low light of the day for me. And it ended up honestly becoming my highlight. The preservation of that city and the history that happened there is just so significant. It was in such better condition, I guess, than I thought I was expecting. I really thought it was going to be like a dusty, ruinous town with not much to see. And it was really interesting to learn about the foundations of culture there and seeing the innovations that the society had created. I loved our time there. We did miss seeing the brothels, which I know is a real highlight. And we also missed seeing the people. We saw some casts of the people that were trapped in Pompeii during the eruption of the volcano, but we did not actually get to see the real people. And I know that that's something that I would have wanted to see. So I'll definitely have to make my way back to Pompeii, but overall really enjoyed that stop. From Pompeii, we reconvened as a group and headed over to Sorrento for a lunch. Because we were already running short on time leaving Pompeii, we didn't have really any free time to explore Sorrento, which was a bummer because I was very excited about seeing Sorrento. We did have a catered lunch. It was at a beautiful location, kind of perched along a peninsula that jutted out towards the water above the ferry stop. The lunch itself was okay. It was essentially like a lemon chicken with kind of sides. Nothing to write home about. There was a really good olive oil cake at the end that I enjoyed. And they did offer a bottle of wine for every couple, which was nice. I love a glass of white wine, so I was happy there. But it was nothing extremely good. It felt like, and I believe we were sitting in a banquet hall. It wasn't outside on the big, beautiful landscape. And we did have an opportunity to take photos from that location. I'll insert a few of them into the video here if you're watching the video. And you can see it's an absolutely gorgeous location, but we had to kind of work our way around tables of people that were sitting there enjoying their meals, and it was a little bit awkward. I'm sure Princess just didn't want to splurge to have us sit out there, but it was a fine lunch. It was a suitable lunch, but I wish we would have had more time in Sorrento. After we finished lunch, we went down this very big flight of stairs down to the ferry stop in Sorrento. And we ended up waiting at that port for, I want to say 45 minutes. So it was a bit of a bummer to feel like we were rushed out of lunch just to go stand and wait for the ferry for 45 minutes. And at this point too, the weather had started to take a bit of a turn. It's starting to get a little bit overcast. And then we all got on these boats to Capri. And by the time we were in Capri, the weather had kind of tanked. It was overcast and it started to sprinkle as we were getting in the line for the funiculars. Because our time was so limited, I think we only had 2 hours to enjoy Capri. And the tour guide, let us know that our tickets to the funiculars were included, but not everybody had to go up there if they didn't want to, that there were shops closer down towards the port. It was my first time in Capri, so I said, I'm definitely taking the funicular up. And the funicular was really cool going up, fun experience, got some really cool views of the island. And when you end up at the top of the funicular, there's a lot of higher end shops, things like Prada and Chanel, as well as a lot of more local artisan shops selling pottery or selling, maybe not as local shops, but places selling lemon themed things and, glasswork and that kind of stuff. Of course, when we got up there, that's really when the rain started to come down. So my mom and I decided to duck into a restaurant that had a really nice view. We sat right by the window and had a gorgeous view overlooking the island. I'm sure it would have been prettier had it not rained. But it was good. We were a little bit hungry after the lunch in Sorrento, so we ended up grabbing a Caesar salad. And then the thing to get in Capri seems to be these frozen lemons filled with lemon sorbet. And I won't lie, my lemon was delightful. My mom also got a limoncello spritz. So we had a fun little time. The salad was €26, which was absurd. But that's kind of what we wanted to do. We just kind of wanted to take in the sights and sit down and chill. My mom's not a big shopper, and I have been saving for my wedding this year. So I didn't really want to go splurge on anything super designer either. And it wasn't really the right conditions to stroll around. We ended up going down the funicular a little bit earlier than we had initially planned. However, I'm glad we did because we ended up waiting around 45 minutes in a very, very tightly packed line for the funicular. There were like local kids pushing tourists around and like haggling people. I'll be honest, it was a pretty poor experience. When we did get in the funicular, they overstuffed us in there, and it made for a really kind of, I'll be honest, dreadful experience and kind of put a damper on the day. Once we were down by the port, we were waiting for the rest of our group to kind of come together, and we were just sitting in the sprinkling rain. It was cold. We were kind of at this point done too. Everybody was getting kind of grouchy. And we were also anxious about the time. We started looking at the clock and realizing that we were supposed to be back at the port of Naples in like 15 minutes, and we were waiting for this hydrofoil that was seemingly never coming, which led to a really interesting ending where we actually held up the departure of the ship because the excursion ran so far over. So I do think that if you are looking to book an excursion like this, something that sees all three of these big sites while in Naples, it is essential to book with Princess. If we had not booked with Princess, if we had gone with a third party or a Via tour, we really would have ended up pretty stuck and likely would have missed the boat or the ship as it departed. So I think the biggest lesson I learned coming out of this was that the ship excursions are absolutely worth it if you end up in these types of situations. Just to kind of like bird's eye view this, pros and cons of what I actually thought about the experience. On the good side, we covered a lot of ground. We saw a bunch of points of interest along the Amalfi Coast. If I never go back to Naples, I know I would have seen quite a bit, but at the same time, if I do go back to Naples, I know I'd want to spend more time in Sorrento and Pompeii. Which brings me to Pompeii itself. Again, that was the true crown jewel for me here. If you're looking to go to Naples at all, make sure whatever excursion you select that Pompeii is included as part of the itinerary. And I mean, I'll be honest, the wine and the cake at lunch, it was nice. I would eat it again. I enjoyed that. As far as cons, I'll admit this tour is simply trying to do too much. There's not enough time to do this itinerary. It's cool seeing all three of these things and checking them off your bucket list. But after this tour, I just realized that the Amalfi Coast needs 2 full days to fully enjoy what that area has to offer. If I did this again as a cruise, I think I would select a Pompeii-specific excursion or select a single city like a Capri or a Sorrento and just really dive and immerse myself into one location as opposed to trying to see everything. I'll also say that crowds and weather can really make or break your experience. Frankly, I didn't have fun in Capri because it was rainy and pretty busy, and it just really did not accommodate the structure of the tour. Similarly, waiting in the lines for Pompeii was really frustrating, and it was just kind of like the luck of the draw based on the days we decided to travel. But for me, there's a limit to how many crowds that I can take, and unfortunately, it kind of exceeded the threshold of crowds on this tour. And then finally, there was a lot of hurry up and wait. I'm always down for a journey, to be part of the destination and be part of the experience, but there was so much journey here, waiting for the tour to start, waiting for Pompeii, waiting for the bus, the ferry, the funicular, another ferry. I think of the 11 hours that we ended up spending on this tour, again, it was scheduled to be a 10-hour tour. We ended up spending 11 hours plus waiting in the Princess Live, so 12 hours for the full day. About 3 of those hours were spent waiting. And, if I did a little back of the envelope math, I think that means that roughly $100 of my tour fees were spent waiting. And that's a real bummer. So who is this tour for? I think if you are truly trying to see everything, you have a high tolerance for crowds, you don't think you're ever going to go back to Naples or the Amalfi Coast again, you really want to see it all, maybe this is for you. This tour is not for the elderly. I'll be honest, I saw multiple people fall and get injured inside Pompeii pretty seriously too. And there was a lot of walking and going up and down stairs that I just would not recommend for this tour. In terms of time of year to see this tour, I think later in the fall and earlier in the spring is probably the best time of year to go. Again, the first week of May with the May Day holiday is not recommended. And then as far as what you should wear for this tour, I dressed cute, and I think that you can dress cute. I think a sundress with walking shoes is totally something that you could do here. If you're interested in more outfit recommendations for this tour, Mediterranean cruises, or Italy in general, you can always check out my blog. I have some pretty robust outfit guides there that can definitely help you, and they're probably a little bit more visual as well. So bottom line, I had a really good time on this tour. There were a lot of things that I wish I would change. I don't know that I would recommend this tour for everybody. I think it's really just those once in a lifetime, trying to see everything in the Amalfi Coast in one day. That'll conclude this edition of the Unexplorer podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. I'd love to hear your feedback if this is something you want to hear a bit more of. I'm also planning to do these for a couple of the other shore excursions I went on, so feel free to check out the Sun Princess review playlist for more. And of course, if you're looking for more blog content, feel free to hit up my website. That's mexplorer.com, EMMEXPLORER.com. Until next time, keep on exploring.